Bespoken Spirits is a modern spirits company blending technology and tradition to take craft spirits to entirely new heights. Their unique craft maturation process unlocks amazing flavor combinations while reducing the environmental impact of each sip. The process is all natural and uses only the highest quality ingredients carefully sourced from the best mills, coopers, and distilleries. The result is an unparalleled flavor experience and something you can feel good about drinking. But don't take our word for it, try it yourself. Bespoken Spirits award-winning products can be purchased through retailers or online. Learn more at www.bespokenspirits.com.
Proudly made in the USA and inspired by the American lifestyle, Country Smooth Bourbon was developed by the first female founder and CEO of an American bourbon whiskey company as a refined experience to be savored on its own or enjoyed in cocktails. We are dedicated to celebrating the spirit of America and the crafting of premium bourbon whiskey. To learn more, visit countrysmooth.com, where you can order online or find a retailer near you. Cheers. Country Smooth. Female founded, country grounded.
With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Bespoken Spirits. I'm your host, Mark, and unfortunately this week, not with me. My co-host, Matt, is not here today. I'm actually on location. I'm down in Newport, Tennessee, so we got a great guest. I'm really excited about this episode. Can't wait to introduce him. But before we get started, I do want to thank all of our sponsors. We appreciate all their support. We do have a Barrel Society member birthday this week, and that's Matt Leidy, so happy birthday, Matt. And that's it. That's the whole introduction. Without my co-host, there's no banter. So,
well, I can pitch in there and make some racket.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I'll go ahead and introduce our guest this week. I'm really excited about this show, but we've got from the hit Discovery Channel show Moonshiners, we have Eric Digger Maines. Digger, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad you had me.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. I know we've been talking about this for a few months, so I'm happy able to get you on here.
Unfortunately, our schedules aren't very conducive to free time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, it just so happened my wife and I were down here in Pigeon Forge celebrating our 21st anniversary. And then we went to the Grains and the Grits Festival over there in Townsend.
That's a good festival.
That was a lot of fun. I'd never been before. So we had I keep looking at my wife for justification, like verification over there. But yes, she gave a thumbs up.
Did you see anybody that was drunk last night?
I saw one or two, maybe.
Yeah, boy.
And I'm not going to say there was actually some distillery people I saw that were pretty snookered over there as well.
Yeah,
so
I've met some of those as well.
But it was a really good time. So I was happy to get to go to that. Looking forward. Tennessee whiskey obviously is it used to just be everybody thinks Tennessee whiskey, they think of Jack, they think of Dickel. But it's really growing. It's expanding a lot. So it's a really cool festival. So I was happy to be.
I'm glad to see liquor come to the forefront, especially aged liquor.
Yeah.
That's what we called it in our world. You had bourbons, but that was something you couldn't afford.
Right.
You'd go find charred liquor. That's what the old timers
charred liquor
here say. Anybody got any charred liquor?
That's funny. So putting it in a barrel back then, or
that's what they called it.
Okay.
It's a barrel finish, but they called it charred
liquor.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Digger, I tell you what, if you want, I watch the show. I'm a huge fan. I've watched all the seasons of it. So, but if you want to take a minute or two and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and where you're from and how you got into doing what you do.
Well, I got into making liquor just out of curiosity. Of course, if you're in East Tennessee, you've been anointed with some homemade liquor a time or two. You couldn't avoid it.
Right.
Hopefully you had a good experience. But no, my dad used to go get liquor from a fella up in Cosby, up toward Gatlinburg and the state line. And it always fascinated me. When we go see this guy, you know, he was taking this slop and making this wonderful clear liquid out of it. Now, the gravity of this liquid he was bringing out, I didn't quite understand at the time. I knew it made some people act stupid and some people happy, but, you know, I looked at that process and I said, you know, I got to help this guy. And I think it was about 14 or 15 years of age. I asked him to let me hang around.
Yeah.
And he said, no, sir, that don't happen in our world.
Huh.
I said, well, what about your family? He said, family's different. He said, now, you might hang around when you get about your age. He said, but nobody works in my world until they're 18 years of age.
Okay.
So he said, if your daddy says it's okay, when you turn 18, come back and see me. And I did.
Nice.
So, and that's why I say, you know, these people say they've been making liquor since they're 5 years old, 10 years old. How many 5 and 10-year-olds can you show me that can sit and watch television straight for 8 hours, let alone watch liquor run for 8 hours?
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
You know, I'm just throwing the BS flag on that. But anyhow, I ran into popcorn setting through my mentor Werner, and he kind of sent me to help popcorn get some things squared away, and that formed a decent friendship. I won't say it's a great friendship because there were up and downs to it. You know,
Sure.
Popcorn's a little cantankerous, so. But it was a good friendship, and he's my friend. I love him, but I don't miss him every day.
Yeah. I can understand that. Yeah. And, you know, it's funny because they show the video clips of him. He looked like he had a good time, but he looked like the kind of guy that wouldn't take a lot of BS. The BS in his world if he didn't understand something. Yeah.
You know, I was constantly trying to do something, make the yield bigger, make that 8 and 10 hours more prosperous.
Right.
And if he didn't quite understand it, it was voodoo in his world. He wanted no part of it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the way, you know, some of the older people, I think, when you try to implement changes or bring in some type of new technology or something that's different, they're not gonna go for it.
Yeah.
So it's the way they've always done it. So you kind of started then. I mean, well, you wanted to start when you were younger, but was anybody in your family at the time involved in the business at all? No. Nobody. Okay, so
It was just sheer fascination that lured me in.
that's funny. Yeah.
Plus, you know, it's heritage in our area.
Sure.
I mean, that's like the old timers would tell me when I was younger. You know, there was a depression, but nobody here really realized it.
Oh.
Because there was microeconomy.
Right.
People wanted that liquor no matter what.
Yeah.
So they were going to come get it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, and my parents were from down in Southeastern, down in Pike County. So growing up as a kid, it was around, and I saw it. And, you know, and uncles had it. I had an uncle that was arrested when he was a younger man for bootlegging, running liquor. He got caught for that and then got out of the business. But, you know, it's just something you kind of, as you grow up, you just know it's around, you know, people that make it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, like you said, kind of a part of the economy. So that's kind of neat. So it wasn't a family thing at all. So as you started getting into it when you were 18, was it something you knew then that this is what you really wanted to do? Or was it just something you were kind of looking at it and thinking, this is fun, see where it goes?
It was fun to me. It was a never-ending science experiment in my world. That's kind of the way I looked at it. I struggled with every other academic class there was except for sciences. Science and history I did well in, and, you know, the rest of them I really didn't care for.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. And I was going to comment about that. I know on the shows, some of the shows I remember, especially that you talk about yeast and how you seem like you're really into the whole yeast thing. And I've got a friend that does beer, kind of the same principle, and it just kind of blows me away, the notes and everything. So that's kind of your thing, isn't it?
It's amazing what one little minuscule organism can bring to a party.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the bourbon, because we've actually got some bourbon here we're going to drink together. And this one, you cracked this one for us, which I appreciate. This is the Weller Special Reserve. This is I believe it's a 90 proofer, if I remember.
I believe it is
correctly. Sometimes I want to call them a 94 proofer. No, it's a 90 proofer. It's the green, that green label. Weller Special Reserve. And this is out of Buffalo Trace Distillery. This one, you know, it's if you're not a big bourbon drinker, this is one that I think is a great.
It's a great intro level. If you're wanting to educate your palate, it's a great place to start.
Yeah, I agree with that. And in terms of nosing it, you know, when it seems like you get that vanilla flavor, you get that caramel a little bit, not really Not really a lot of oak. I do get, and this, I think these are somewhere between 6 and 8 years.
I think so,
if I remember correctly. But again, and it's not too hot. You're not picking up a lot of that ethanol. You're not getting a lot of alcohol in the glass on this. But it definitely has a good nose to it. What do you think, Digger?
The nose on it's very pleasant to me. It's not harsh. You see a lot of people when they'll nose a drink, it immediately gives them a closed mindset if they get a little burn.
Yep. Right.
And this is not that way. So it's a really great drink.
Yeah, I agree. And this is one of my this is one that I use when I make hot toddies during the fall. For some reason, because it's a wheated mash bill. I can't remember. It's 70-something wheat or 70-something corn and then 20-something.
71 or 72 corn or maybe 73 corn.
Yeah. And it's got the wheat mash bill. And it's the same line, that Weller goes into the to become the Pappy line, the Van Winkle reserves and all that. But yeah, there's something about that wheat for some reason.
It mellows it out really nice.
Yeah, and in a hot toddy it does too. Well, I was going to ask you, we're sitting here in your building here in Newport, and it's on the show. People that watch the show,
it is in fact.
Yeah, so it's kind of it's a unique experience for me to come in here. It's a beautiful old building. I mean, how old is this place?
This place is let's see, it was finished in 1903, I believe.
Okay.
They started in 95 construction on it. What the historians tell me, I wasn't there to witness it, although my appearance would suggest that, but I was not. But the historians tell me around 1895 they started and completed 5 years later.
Yeah, and you guys do a lot of different stuff in here. You film some of the show in here as well.
Film a little bit in here, especially rainy days. You got to have somewhere to go where it's rainy.
Yeah.
And the upside to that makes all this a write-off for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right.
There's an upside to everything.
There you go. That's a good thing. Well, it's funny because we were coming down the main street and I was looking and saw the sign that said Fruit Jar Alley, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I knew right where I was. So
yeah.
that
was kind of my desire. When Mark finally talked me into doing this show, they came to Newport to talk to us before they did anybody on the show.
Okay.
And I was just a tiny bit reluctant and I was really reluctant.
Sure.
The nature of this business, you shouldn't put a lot out there.
Right.
So until I could kind of get that kind of squared away where I'm not an everyday part of it,
right.
I needed to lay low. And finally I agreed to it, but I told Mark, I said, look, I'm not doing this for Gatlinburg. I'm not doing it for Pigeon Forge. I'm doing it for Newport, Tennessee.
Okay.
I'm going to do something positive for our county and our town as you should.
Yeah. So
that was my first effort. I bought this building, started refurbishing it before it fell down.
Nice. Yeah, and like I said, it's a beautiful building. Really, really nice place. I like being in here. I love your area here. This is your bar area.
Yeah, this is my little man cave.
Yeah, this is really nice. So you mentioned Mark, and unfortunately he couldn't join us today.
Yeah, he had a birthday party. He sends regrets. Sorry, Hattie, you're missing out on some good liquor.
Yeah, no doubt. I brought some good stuff we're going to break into here a little bit later. But so now, are you both originally from here, from Newport?
We are, in fact.
Okay, so you guys have known each other then for quite
over 40 years.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Now, on the show, I mean, they portray it. It looks like, you guys are best friends. You spend a lot of time together.
We are, in fact, best of friends and have been for the majority of those 40 years. We've not seen eye to eye on everything, but,
right.
There's nothing two rational adults can't talk about and come away at peace.
Yeah.
There's no sense be throwing fists about everything and throwing dishes at each other. So we'll leave that to our wives, throw at us. But we've been great friends. Had a lot of good times over the years.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, and that really to me comes through in the show. I mean, there's some things I think on TV when you see it, like reality TV, I guess you would call it. But sometimes you see things and you're like, yeah, that's not real, or that's maybe not real. But the relationship that you guys have, I mean,
it's bona fide.
That comes through as genuine. And
it is. Our history in this liquor business, that's what I tell folks, we didn't get on TV to lie to you. It's facts.
Yeah. So who started first? Did you start in the business first, or was it Mark that actually started, or did you guys just do your own separate thing and then come together?
Well, actually, I guess as far as making liquor, I started before Mark did.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he was more into the drinking and selling a little liquor, bootlegging.
I got you. Well, now that would be a good partner, right? If you're making it, and
you want to get rid of it. That's what I never could get Popcorn to understand.
Yeah, that's
I said, I kept trying to coach him. Look, if you had a hardware store, all of this right over here, that would be an asset.
Yeah.
I said, in our case, our excess stock is a liability.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
let's
You got to
get
get
it
rid
out
of
the
it.
door. But he didn't see it that way. He liked the notoriety of selling one jar at a time.
Yeah. And that comes through too. I think, they talk about it on the show, and you guys have kind of mentioned that. I think even in the first episode of this season, JB was talking about that, that he liked to really make a production of it and get out there.
He was a bit of a show off.
Yeah. Yeah. So that could have
That was his big detriment right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's tough, but he seemed like quite a character. But at least with Mark, I mean, you guys about the same age. You get into the business, you get working together. Popcorn was older, and you started doing some things with him. So that kind of changes the dynamic of the relationship because he's older and you're younger and going to do things.
Well, now, there's another misrepresentation as well. Popcorn wasn't as old as he wanted to let on.
Oh, okay.
He always thought that if people thought he was older, they'd have sympathy on him. He never would tell how old he was. He was 62 years of age when he died.
Was he really?
Yeah.
I did not know that because the video and the things you see of him, he does.
Well, somebody asked him how old he was, he'd just turn around and just spout at him, too damn old, and that's all he'd
That was it. Part of that persona then that he had.
Well, that's what he wanted, and then plus, folks, as it's a misconception, I guess, on everybody's part a lot of times that the look of maturity sometimes means more knowledge.
Right.
And that's not necessarily the case a lot of times.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was older than you, but not by 30 or 40 years older.
No.
He
He was just about, let's see. Yeah, he was just about 18 years older.
Okay. Yeah. But that could still change the dynamic of the relationship.
Oh, yeah.
And you and Mark can go head to head and, still work it out. Whereas with someone like that, I think.
Oh, Popcorn would storm off. If you argued a point with him, he'd get mad and storm off.
Yeah, that's just the way some people work. So you guys, you guys have been doing this for a while, obviously. Last year we go through COVID, the shutdown. How did that affect what you guys? Not in terms of filming the show, but I mean just in terms of your business outside of the show.
Well, business outside the show, as far as liquor business, everything turned into manufacturing hand sanitizer.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, although people at the time were too scared to drink, they wanted to keep their hands clean.
Right.
And I get that. So, we just started making sugar liquor.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Hand sanitizer.
So business was pretty good then.
Business was booming. God, you couldn't make enough. And, when somebody realized somebody was getting a gallon of hand sanitizer they were trying to offer you double the money for it. And, it's hard for you. Your morals are you stick with your initial deal. Whoever you made the deal with, that's who you stayed with. When somebody's offering you $400 for a jug of hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
So it could have been lucrative, but I was content with taking care of those around here.
I got you. Well, that sounds good. That makes sense. Take care of your own, and they'll take care of you.
Exactly.
A good way to look at it. Now, you kind of joked there for a second and talked about morals, and we talked about this before we started. Being here in a small town, Eastern Tennessee, like I said, being from a small town in Kentucky, myself and my family, my grandparents, great-grandparents, everybody was in the Baptist, Free Will Baptist, or Old Regular Baptist, and alcohol was shunned.
That's taboo.
You don't do it. So being here in Newport, did you experience that, or have you experienced that pushback from people? And
oh yeah, I've had preachers get on to me, and then they'd come get a jar of liquor for cough medicine.
Cough medicine, right?
Yeah, and they would come back again in 2 weeks, get another jar to make cough medicine. Oh, I gave most of that to the rest of my family.
Yeah, they've been sick.
I love telling them after about 4 trips, you might want to see a doctor about that cough. But I'm church going feller. Well, I was raised in a church,
Right.
And of course, we're Methodists, and I reckon the Methodists we just tend to read a little bit further, maybe.
Yeah.
Bible don't say you can't take a drink. I have yet to find it in there anywhere, and I've
Right.
read through it a time or two.
Yeah.
Thought I paid pretty good attention. I hope I did, but I never saw where you couldn't take a drink of liquor.
Right.
You're not supposed to be a drunkard, but the Bible tells you, drink your wine with a joyful heart.
Right.
It's not what goes in your body, it's what comes out. And that's called the judgmental factor there. That's what a lot of preachers tend to be. They want to be judgmental.
Yep.
Go in with an open mind, realize if somebody enjoys a nice drink and they're not sloppy and they're taking care of their family, they're doing just fine.
Yep. That's a good point. I mean, that's a really very, very solid point. Because growing up as a kid, to me, it was taboo. You don't do it. My dad drank when I was younger, and then he started going to church and got saved and stopped drinking. But as a kid, when I was in high school, I mean, that's just what you started doing with your buddies,
Yeah.
But it was taboo, and nobody in the church drank, and of course, nobody openly drank in the church. But that there were people that, like you said,
Exactly.
people buying it for cough medicine. It's funny because when my best friend, his dad had a bottle of Jack Daniels, and they were very devout religious people, and we asked him why he had it, and it was to make
Medicinal purpose.
First taste of whiskey I had was sneaking in that bottle.
And the thing about it is, anytime you take a drink, if it's done in the right context, it's for medicinal purposes.
I agree.
If you take your little horn of liquor every night before you go to bed, that's way healthier for you than Ambien is.
I agree with that. And actually, my wife, who's sitting here with us, her father, who was very adamant about her, and her mom, very adamant about not drinking, but her dad would soak raisins in gin. I don't know if you've ever heard people doing that, but he had a container of gin-soaked raisins, and pretty much about every night, I guess it was, I probably shouldn't say that. I'm going to get in trouble.
Spoonful of raisins.
He would have him some raisins, some gin-soaked raisins, but he wasn't drinking.
No.
He was just...
No, he was eating the liquor.
He was just calming his nerves down a little bit, getting ready for bed. So,
well, we're all quick to defend our bad habits, and we're going to get to them whatever means necessary.
Yeah. Well, that's why I love doing the show, because my parents, it's funny because they're both still alive, and when I post things about bourbon, they don't like the pictures on Facebook.
Exactly.
But they understand.
Our younger years, you were talking about drinking when you were young. And don't do it, kids. If you're out there listening, don't drink till you're of legal age. There's plenty enough time to do the big boy stuff. Enjoy your childhood.
Yep.
Too many people grow up too fast.
That's true.
But I think that the good Lord allows us to get through those years for a reason. And one of the reasons, in my opinion, is what we're doing right here now. Now, when you were 18 years of age and you got a bottle of this put in your hands, now would you have enjoyed that?
No.
You had no idea how to let your palate dissect this drink.
Not at all.
And separate those flavors.
Right.
Now we're here at this point in our life, and we can responsibly enjoy this.
Right.
And not be a hindrance to ourselves or anyone else.
Or to my wife.
Yeah. I've got one too. Yes. She's put up with a lot with me.
Oh, gosh. Well, talking about the flavors and picking things out on the palate and learning how to actually enjoy a good bourbon, what do you pick out in terms of the taste profile on this?
Well, initially, and like I say, you'll have to look over me on this one because I had COVID a year ago this month, and I've still not fully got it back.
Gotcha.
So I've noticed that with my palate coming back, I'm tasting things a little differently now.
Yeah.
And immediately, I get a little bit of peppermint off the nose.
Okay.
Just right off the first sip.
Yeah.
And then it opens up to just mild vanillas and cinnamons.
Yeah, this is just such a well balanced bourbon, and we drink it with Harlan Wheatley, the master distiller up there on the show. He was on a show last year or earlier this year, and we drank the special reserve with him. And that's what that's what he said. That's their goal with this one, is just to make a well balanced bourbon where if you're introductory to it, that you taste this and you're going to pick up a lot of the flavors. But I agree, for a wheated bourbon, initially, I do get that spiciness, almost more like a rye whiskey.
Yeah.
When it hits my tongue, I get some spice to it. There's just that sweetness to it, and it kind of comes across to me almost like a little bit like maybe even a cinnamon candy.
Yeah.
Somehow, you get that kind of hot spiciness and that sweetness with it. The finish isn't super long, but it's still just such a good bourbon.
Oh yeah, it finishes so mild and so sweet.
Yeah, this is not gonna burn you up. But yeah, when I was 18 years old, if somebody had poured me a neat shot of this and told me to sip on it, I would have told them they're crazy.
We'd have killed it.
Yeah, ask them for a Little King's Cream Ale or something.
Yeah.
Well, Digger, I tell you what, we're at the end of round one here, so let's just take a quick break. We'll get a word from our sponsors, and we'll come back with more with Digger Mains from Discovery Channel's hit series Moonshiners in just a minute. So everybody just sit tight, and we'll be right back.
The Stagg Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
Spirits of French Lick crafts their spirits using only the finest agricultural product that has defined character, following their motto, respect the grain. They lead the way in representing the quality of the Hoosier artisan distilling process while paying tribute to its inseparable past. By implementing best practices from those early times, combined with modern touches, Spirits of French Lick has created a truly unique place in the industry. Spirits of French Lick products are distributed throughout Indiana, Kentucky, and Missouri, and can also be purchased online through Sealbox at sealbox.com. Visit spiritsofFrenchLick.com to learn more information and make sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram. All right, everybody, welcome back for round session period number 2, whatever you want to call it, of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and I am actually by myself today. Matt, unfortunately, is not here because we're on location. We are down in Newport, Tennessee, and we're hanging out today with Eric Digger Mains, the star of Moonshiner from Discovery Channel. Digger, welcome back for round 2.
Well, thank you, but I don't know whether you hurt my feelings or not. You said you were alone. I'm thinking, I'm right here.
Well, in terms of my hosting, I'm all alone. But this could work. It could be the I'm Mark, so you're used to working with
Mark. Mark, so that
there
way
you
I won't
go.
Mispronounce the name.
The Mark and Digger Podcast. Here we go. All right, so. This round, we have poured up something a little different. This is, and I brought this one with me, so I figure Digger was kind enough to share the first round. So this is the brand new 2021-03 batch of Booker's. This is called Bardstown Batch. This actually comes in at 125.5.
That's a good one.
So this is going to pack a little bit of a punch to it.
Gets right to the point.
Yeah, it does.
But it's not harsh for a barrel cast strength. It's rather pleasant.
It's not, and I'll tell you,
on the nose, that is.
I bought this 3 days ago, and I'm slowly working it down already. And I keep telling myself I'm not going to drink it all, but I'm telling you, every time I taste it, I enjoy it. So what you're nosing it over there a little bit, though. I know it's kind of hot.
It's a little hot. That alcohol will mask a little of it, but
yeah,
it's still got some great cinnamon notes and a lot of vanilla.
Yeah, and I get
it's
actually
a little oaky.
Yeah. And this one, it seems like these Bookers are. I want to say they're a little over 6 years. I don't know if it's on the bottle. Of course, I can't see a daggone thing, unfortunately, but I think they're a little 6-7 years, something like that. But I love these Bookers. I love the high proof stuff. That's just kind of my favorite thing. I pick up a little bit of cherry on this one, which is kind of funny. But I do enjoy it. So yeah, so we'll have to sip on this and talk about the taste here in a little bit. But let's kind of transition. We talked about you. Oh, one thing I was going to ask you though, and I forgot in the first session, how'd you get your nickname?
Well, my nickname came from the fact that I am a licensed funeral director and embalmer. I work for my dad, or as my dad used to say it, I pay him to go make liquor for popcorn. So we had a friend in town. He was a retired military guy. He was CW4, been in for years and retired around the mid-70s. And he didn't like calling people by their name. He liked nicknames or last names.
Yeah.
So he came through my dad's funeral home one day, and I was just sitting there reading or doing homework or something. And he said, "I'll see you, Eric." And that's the way he pronounced my name is Eric. And I just waved at him. He said, "You know what?" He said, "I don't like that damn name." He said, Digger Phelps said his dad was the town undertaker. Said, "If that's good enough for that son of a bitch, it's good enough for you." Said, "You're Digger from now."
That's it. That's where you got it from.
That's where it stuck. I was about 14 years of age at that time.
That's funny. Yeah, that's a great story. I'd never heard that before. So, so after Digger Phelps, the great basketball
Yeah.
coach. Yeah, so that's really funny. So your family owned a funeral home here in town.
They did, in fact.
Gotcha. I don't.
Yep.
Well, no, I think you told a story. Did you tell a story about losing a coffin?
I did. Well, it wasn't a coffin. It was a cot.
Okay.
Coming out of the old St. Mary's Hospital, and they always put, it's like when the hospitals, when you're dead, you're no longer really used to them.
Sure.
They can't get any more insurance money, so they put you in the worst possible place in the hospital, and it's still that way to this day.
Yeah.
But, coming out of the old St. Mary's, there was a hallway that you had to go down to the ramp where you took the cot to your hearse or your van or whatever you're using, which we always used a hearse. And I was actually picking this body up for a funeral home in a neighboring county that was short on help, and my dad sent me to help them.
Yeah.
But I was walking down this hallway it was a pretty good sized lady, and the pipes leaked in the basement. So, there was water dripping on the floor, and I just happened to step on one of those little spots on those old asbestos glue down tiles.
Yeah, right.
Well, I fell and hit hard, and I was trying to scramble back up. But with wet shoes and leather shoes, that's kind of hard. So I was just watching and waving at that cot, still going toward the door because I couldn't get up off the floor. And they cut so much out. They cut a lot of the story out. Editors, they got to do everything on a certain time.
Sure.
Well, the cot hit the double automatic doors, knocked those off the tracks, and the cot went right up in the back of the hearse like it was supposed to. Now, like I say, by this time, several people had come out of their offices or rooms or wherever they were working in there to see what all the commotion was, because I'm sure I was cussing top of my lungs.
Sure.
And they came out and looked, and that cot went right up in the back of the hearse like it was supposed to. And I just looked around and I said, I'm getting better at this. But that was an actual event.
So was there a time you thought that you'd go into the family business? Was that the plan?
I went on to mortuary college.
Oh, you did?
I did, yeah.
Okay. I did not realize that.
Yeah. And after my mother died, I hated it.
Yeah.
The funeral home it was a family place.
Right.
And after she died, it wasn't the same place.
Yeah. Yeah, so that makes sense.
I was pretty much done with about everything in my life except making liquor.
Yeah. Well, I can't say I blame you. I've been fortunate enough to keep my mom, but my wife lost her mother several years back, and it is a difficult thing to go through. So it's
a big adjustment.
Yeah. Completely can understand that. So let's jump back in. Let's talk about the show because, like I said, it's I'm a fan of the show. I have watched it since the very beginning. It may be something, just because of my heritage coming from Eastern Kentucky and my parents from the mountains, and just knowing that it's part of the culture. I think it's just, to me, it's always had that appeal to it.
It's all about preserving a little history. That's what I tell my kids all the time. Look, you're learning this, whether you're ever going to put it to use or not.
Right.
And we're talking about growing a little garden, canning some vegetables,
right,
preserving some hog meat.
Yeah.
You got to cure out hog meat if you're from the South. That bacon, that's proof the good Lord loves us. So, I want them to have all this knowledge. Now, the fact that they will probably never need to utilize that knowledge.
Right.
But they need it.
Yep. Yeah.
If you forget, that's what I tell people, we've seen so much that's gone on in society in the last year or so. People tearing down statues that they're not paying homage to an individual for their acts.
Right.
They're more, in my mind, a reminder of what was done wrong.
Right.
So we won't do the same foolishness again.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You think about these third world countries that repeat history all the time.
Yeah.
That's because they destroy their history and they've got nothing else to remind them, oh, wait a minute, we don't need to go that way. That was a horrible mistake.
Yeah.
Let's try something different.
They're rewriting the exact same story that had already been written.
Exactly.
But everybody's just forgotten about it, unfortunately. Yeah, I agree with that.
I want them to know the good, wholesome things about history. And even though some people think that making liquor is not one of the wholesome things about our history and our heritage in these mountains.
Yeah.
It's a big part of it.
Yeah, it is. That's one of the first things the farmers, settlers did when they, left Pennsylvania, left the coast and headed this way, and they got over here and found out they could grow corn, couldn't grow rye very well, and
exactly
they had all this leftover corn. What are you going to do with it? You know?
Who knew corn made the best liquor in the world?
Then you get over here and you get this great water, in the Kentucky and Tennessee area, and you combine that water with those grains, and you got a good product.
You've got a good product.
Yeah.
And, it's been used for everything from anesthesia to antibiotic purposes in wounds.
Sure.
And even on it probably created a lot of peace that we never knew about.
I'd say so. And this Booker's definitely could be used as an anesthetic as well on my tongue.
Yeah, it's a little bit fierce, but it's really nice.
Yeah, I'd tell you, this is probably one of my favorite Booker's batches that I've ever picked up. So I'm hoping I can head back over to Costco in Lexington and they still have some on the shelf. So getting back to the show, I keep going around and asking all these other questions, but you mentioned earlier that Mark came to you and talked about it, and then you guys talked to the producers. So what was it that made you decide? Was it the relationship with Mark, or what was it that made you decide that you're going to move forward and do the show?
Well, it was more my relationship with Mark.
Okay.
Liquor business, that's something you don't openly talk about.
Right.
And I was still pretty active in it at that time.
Yeah.
And out of, the safety of others involved, it was best that I separate myself a little bit.
Yeah.
Therefore, I did. And once that came about, Mark came back again, insisting, we really need to do this. We really need to do it. I finally agreed. And honestly, I agreed because I'm smart enough to look at TV ratings. And
sure.
This show was destined to be canceled. I think it was on its swan song that fourth season. Because it was really tanking.
Yeah.
It was at the bottom of the ratings during that
I don't think I even knew that. I just love watching it.
Well, I'm a little more curious. I'm the guy that when I see something that piques my interest, I either still go to get the old World Book encyclopedias down.
Yeah.
I'm old school. And occasionally I will Google something. So I look, and you can find ratings online easy.
Right.
So it's doing rather well now. Whose fault that is, I don't know. But
So you decided to do the show, and you guys come on. So did you have any pushback from people in the industry, not the TV industry, but in your industry, the production side of things that you were involved with? Did they?
You're talking about the backwoods engineers.
Yeah. Were they?
By and large, they didn't.
Okay.
The old guys here, they knew we'd earned our stripes.
Yeah.
And, it's like an old fella here that I would go talk to about some things, and he's still alive. Leroy's his first name, but we won't mention his last. But Leroy did about 4 tours through the Federal Bureau of Corrections Educational Facility. And, that's what I'd always go to him. I said, well, you old-timers, you did this, or you old-timers did that. And he stopped me one day. He said, let me stop you right there, son. He said, you're the old timer now. He said, I'm a has-been.
Oh, man.
So he said, my ship has sailed.
Yeah.
So I get that. But those guys, man, they were sharp. They knew more about escaping than we did about anything because we never faced those harder times with this.
Right. Yeah.
And honestly, everybody asks us all the time, that takes into another facet on this jewel. Everybody asks us all the time, how do you get away with it? And I said, well, I don't know where you're living, but, we got people here falling dead every week with overdoses, young people, lives that are being wasted.
Right.
So where do you think law enforcement's concentrating their efforts? Nobody ever killed the grandmother or stole anything from their grandparents or their parents to go buy a jar of liquor.
Yeah.
But they're killing their own family to get this dope.
Yep.
And, I think that these kids need to open their eyes. They're really destroying a lot of the fabric of our world.
Yeah, it's a pandemic, and, where we're from, where I'm originally from in Kentucky, right across the river from Huntington, West Virginia, they did a whole show about them a couple of years ago, about how the heroin addiction and everything it's just destroyed that city, which is sad. I used to go up there and watch a lot. The first rock concerts I ever went to was Huntington, West Virginia.
Yeah.
But it really has made a huge impact.
It really makes you think, was this all by design?
Well, that's true.
Because, first and foremost, there's doctors out there. And if I'm stepping on your toes, I'm sorry, but you all are enablers in some instances. I've had too many of my friends that I tried to get off this dope. They'd say, hey, I don't have to go to Florida. I go to this doctor here, and if 30 don't work, I get 60. If 60 don't work, get 120. Then if the 60 milligrams don't work, I get 90s. I just tell them what I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. It's
pain medication, you have to stop after a few days to make sure the pain's gone.
Right.
And if you keep feeding that pain, that sickness you feel is a pain, then you're doomed for disaster.
Yep.
So the doctor started this through urgence of, I'm sure, Big Farm.
Yep.
They're big about selling their medication.
Right.
Then okay, these addicts get the rug pulled out from under them. No longer can this doctor write because he's under sanction from the DEA.
Right.
He can only write, controlled substances under approval from somebody else watching him.
Right.
So the addicts can't get what they want. Well, all of a sudden, here shows somebody up with some heroin, which is the same high, basically.
Yep.
And they find out, hey, I can stay high for a week for what it took me a day on pills.
Yeah.
So was it real? I mean, it seems like it's a big
it is
architectural wonder on the illegal upscale.
Yeah, I agree. It's just very strange how over the last 10 years that epidemic has grown like it has. But and I agree. I mean, it started, and I've seen it in my family with friends. You go in, you get a prescription of whatever instantly. I mean, I had to go to the hospital a couple of weeks ago, and I was having some back pain. And the first thing they did was give me an IV and give me morphine. Yeah. I mean, that was the first thing. I'm like, wait a second. I've never had morphine in my life.
Yeah, I don't want it.
Yeah, and they're like, well, it's our baseline. That's what we start with. I'm like, I was struggling with the decision, but I went ahead and did it. It felt good. I mean, I'm not going to lie, scary. But it was like, what's going to happen after the fact? Is this something I'm going to be like, oh, I want to do this again? Or it's like, I didn't really want it, but yeah, and I think that's unfortunate that we've gotten to that point. Yeah. And I think it has broken down our society a lot.
Insane.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
But anyhow, that's how we get away with it, I think. They know who we are, they know what we do, but are we high on the food chain? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. Gotcha. People that are killing people are high on the food chain.
Yeah. Now this year, you guys, first episode, you guys had gone back to kind of some hallowed ground, I think.
We did.
You want to talk about that a little bit and what that meant?
Yeah, I don't mind. That's a great place. Now, had we been there before? Yes.
Sure. Right.
There's cinematic liberties that they take, and I find them ridiculous sometimes. But, that was where we went to. That's, of course, Popcorn did the last run up there.
Right.
And we were in and out during that time.
I figured
it's not like we didn't know where it was at. But we also went up there to dig ramps. That was the biggest population of ramps that I'd ever seen. I grew up in these mountains, and I was just, when the first time we ever went up there, and it looked like a big field. They were so thick it looked like monkey grass. It was so thick, and I just lost my mind. When we came out there that day, that first time we went in, me, JB, and Little Bill, another guy that worked with us, and Popcorn, we brought 37 milk crates full of ramps out there.
So tell everybody out there who isn't from
but if you're not from the Appalachian Mountains, a ramp is a wild leek.
Yeah.
And some folks call them out. I won't say that. People from West Virginia, they were ready to castrate me because I said that people in West Virginia call them leeks. I didn't go up there and ask. Somebody has passed through my world and told me we call them wild leeks. That's all I'm going on, guys. I didn't write the encyclopedia. But they're a little bit spicy like an onion. When you cook them, they get really, really sweet, and they've just got a unique flavor that you would not believe.
Yeah.
And I buy them, I freeze them, or I don't buy them. I dig them, I freeze them. I put them in a dehydrator and turn them in to grind them up into powder and use them as a shake seasoning on steaks. You can use them in any place that garlic will, except now ramps will make your breath nuclear. And you combine that with a little homemade liquor, and sometimes it gets very pungent.
Yeah, I could just imagine. But you guys went back up there, the show where Popcorn ran his last run. Is that's the story? Yeah. So it was you and Mark and JB was with you, and you guys seemed like you had a really good time. And just
we did. It was JB and Mark and myself. We have a lot of good memories together. Especially me and JB, but JB and myself, we spend a lot of time together working as well.
Yeah, okay.
Because at the end of the day, it wasn't Popcorn making all that liquor. It was me and JB, and majority of the help would come from Little Bill, Gene Presnell, another little fellow that helped us. But we had some good times.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it shows even without Popcorn there. I mean, just you guys going back there, you could see and I know part of it was for the show. Yeah. But you could tell that it still meant a lot to you guys. So that's,
and I get it. They say, oh well, if you just walk in and say, well, here it is, it's not as eye opening as if you do it this way.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to give them a little of that. Now, I'm obstinate when it comes to a lot of things, and I'm not going to do any fabrication. I'll recreate, but I will not fabricate.
I got you. That makes sense. Now, when you're doing stuff, like you guys did that run with JB, you talked about just doing straight corn on that run. So now when you come up with an idea for something you want to run, I mean, where does that come from? You just try all sorts of different stuff, or was there...
Well, there again, we were reliving it. We had done all grains in the past, and but now popcorn would, if he came in and found out about it, he'd sneak in the still houses in the middle of the night and he'd throw the slop valve on the stills and run it out on the ground.
Really?
He damn sure would. He was that obstinate about it. So we did do a corn run, and popcorn found out about it, and it was really good liquor. Come to find out, even though he was against it and was had nothing positive to say about it, he was selling it $10 a jar higher. So what does that do? Yeah. So he didn't care for it, but it was still obviously good stuff. Yeah. And the only thing we did different this time, we would just keep heating the corn and cooking it till it just basically fell apart.
Yeah.
And we used the magical world of modern technology in the brewing world, which is the amylase enzyme, as a demonstration purpose.
Yeah. That was pretty cool. I mean, did that really happen?
It does really happen that way.
I've never. It's
and I
crazy.
use flake corn just so it would thicken up like that. It's more like oatmeal.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. You guys were stirring that. If people have seen the show, if you're not, go back and watch it. But I mean, it does. It's like, how in the hell are you guys going to distill anything out of that? Because it was like stirring my oatmeal in the morning. Yeah. It's like,
but the amylase in it, get buy you a little pack of it and put it in your oatmeal. You'll be able to drink it.
Really? Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to try that out, right? My wife's like, I'm not so sure that we're going to do that. So we're getting close to the end of round 2. So let's talk about this Booker's in terms of the flavor. Have we already done that? I don't think we have talked about the flavor. We talked about the nose. Right. Yeah. So what about in terms of the flavor profile you get on the palate on that?
Well, on your second drink, and that's what I suggest to people when they try cast strength liquor like this, just get you a little sip and coat your tongue and let your tongue kind of get used to that fire.
Yeah.
And then that second little sip you take across and let it spread across your tongue. Then you taste the flavors.
Right.
That's what I'd done a second ago. And you mentioned the cherry. I got cherry on the initial flavor. A little fire from liquor, and I got cherry.
Yeah.
And a good heavy caramel.
Yeah. And
there's some nutmeg that I'm pulling out there on the last right now. And I'll get me another drink and taste.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the cherry comes through. To me, it's almost like a I don't want to say a burnt brown sugar, but like a cooked brown sugar.
Heavy caramel.
So, it's just that sweetness on there. Yeah. But at 125.5, it still packs a little bit of a punch.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, this is probably one of my favorite Booker's batches that I've ever had, because that cherry,
that is
and
good.
that sweetness that combines. It's almost like kind of like a cherry cobbler or a cherry crumble or something like that, where you get that brown sugar on top and like a nice sweet cherry filling on there. So it's a good one. So well, we can talk about this. I got another question I was going to ask you, but we can come back round 3 and pick up with that. So let's take a quick break and get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with Digger from the Discovery Show Moonshiners in just a minute. Everybody sit tight, and we'll be right back. Located just east of Lake Tahoe and the Sierra Nevada mountains, Frey Ranch Distillery was founded by 5th-generation Nevada farmers. Our grain-to-glass bourbon is made using a 4-grain mash bill, including a non-GMO corn, rye, wheat, and barley, all of which is 100% sustainably grown on the 1,500-acre Frey Ranch. And our commitment to excellence shows with a recent gold medal win at the 2020 Whiskeys of the World and USA Spirits competitions. Find out more at www.freyranch.com.
Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The 3 Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.3chordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final session of the Bourbon Life Podcast, presented by Bespoken Spirits. I'm your host, Mark, and I'm flying solo, sort of, today. I mean, I guess I can count my guest as a co-host.
I'll do what I can.
Well, I appreciate it. So, sitting down here in Newport, Tennessee, with Digger Maines, one of the stars from Discovery. Well, you know, you and Mark, in my mind, are two of the big stars of the show. I mean, there's no other way to say it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
We still just realize we're nothing but old country boys, and that's all we'll ever be. So whether we're stars or not, that's remaining to be seen.
Well, I appreciate you letting us come down here and spend some time with you this
Glad
afternoon.
to do it.
Very, very much. So, and, you know, speaking of that, because that was a question I was going to ask you toward the end, but since we're on that topic, did you ever think that doing moonshine would ever lead you to this point?
You know, I knew moonshine was going to be a rage, and I knew that it would be one day. Now, to this extent, no, I never fathomed that.
Yeah.
You know, I tried to talk our county executive back years ago. One of the banks in town closed a branch on Cosby, which, you know, most of the old TTB agents, that's what they dubbed Cosby, Tennessee, the moonshine capital of the world.
Yeah.
And they would always go on to say that's not because of the amount of liquor they produced, it's because of the quality. It wasn't the quantity, it was the quality.
Yeah.
So, you know, I kind of take pride in that fact that these Cosby boys are the ones that taught me a lot. But I told our county executive at that time, I said, take that building and make it a moonshine museum.
Right.
You know, I said, after a little more thought, I said, make it the Moonshiners Hall of Fame for the state of Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, people that had a colorful person from their county, they could pass it along to the board and then maybe get them inducted into the Moonshine Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't listen. You know, he was, what will the church people say?
Right.
I said, well, they'll probably say that you're, bound for hell right now, but 20 years down the line, they're going to say, boy, Harold had some insight about him.
Yeah, that's right.
And now they've missed a boat because they gave it to some conservancy and they tore the building down.
Yeah.
So there's where we're at with that.
Yeah, but moonshine has exploded. I mean, there's been no question about it. Just across the board, it's been crazy. All the brands that have popped up, and you know, I think about, because we come to Gatlinburg quite often. And Old Smoky, I think, was probably one of the first ones that I was familiar with that started.
The Popcorn Sutton brand came out of the gate first.
Okay.
They actually died first, so they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
They just thought that Popcorn's legacy was just going to make it fly off the shelves, and that's not the case.
Right. Are they now? So is somebody still actually distilling Popcorn Sutton?
Somebody else has bought the rights to produce. Pam still owns the brand.
Okay.
So they're collaborating, but nothing's been produced yet.
I got you. Okay. Which is, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate because, you know, most people now, when you think about moonshine, and that's because I think of the show, you know, people that are outside of this area. I mean, when you mention moonshine to somebody from Oklahoma or from California,
Australia, New Zealand,
Popcorn Sutton.
About popcorn.
Yeah, it's Popcorn Sutton. So that's synonymous with it. But now another brand that has come out that you guys have had some work with, Sugarlands. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys got involved? I say you guys, I mean you and Mark. So
yeah, well, we actually knew one of the people involved in it before they launched.
Okay.
And they had reached out for a little bit of help. And then when they got a master distiller in there, we kind of collaborated with them, gave them the old timers viewpoints and do's and don'ts and how-tos.
Okay.
And then eventually we sold them some recipes. Now, do we own any part of that distillery? We get told all the time we own that distillery. No, we don't.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have that kind of money. If I did, I'd probably put it in something way less lucrative.
Now, Digger, it's on Google. If you Google search it, there are places out there, you know, it says you own it.
I know. They also say I'm worth $6 million, but I've yet to find that account yet. I'm looking for it.
Looking for it, right? So is your wife, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she thinks I've hid something from her.
Oh, so you guys have worked with them. I mean, kind of consulting then, it sounds like, on a consulting basis to help them get their brand launched.
And I guess you'd call us brand ambassadors. We go out on trips for them. People, hang on, they want us to come visit them all the time.
Yeah.
Well, there's a process we go through. We don't have the money to tour.
Right.
And, you know, that wouldn't pay us anything anyhow. Nobody'd pay to come see us probably. But if Sugarlands gets interest from a liquor store. If they buy enough product, they'll pay to send us there. So that's the process. Yeah. If you want us to come to your town, talk to your liquor store, and then they'll work out the particulars to get us to your town.
And you'll be there.
Of course we will.
Yeah. Now you guys do have do you have one here? I'm looking over on your shelf to see the hazelnut rum. That's
Yeah, it don't sit around long.
Yeah, okay.
It gets gone.
I got you. Yeah, that's why I was.
Enough in there for a little tasty if you want.
Well, yeah, a tasty. Yeah, I might have to do that. I guess we should probably talk about what we've got poured up for this third and final session. I brought another bottle with me. I brought several because I didn't know what you'd want to taste. But this is the 2020 George T Stagg. This is the BTAC bottle. Of course, Buffalo Trace just announced their BTAC lineup for 2021, and George T Stagg is not going to be part of that this year. They've announced that I guess the barrels, the quality was not up to their standards. But then just a couple of days ago, they announced that Stagg Junior is now just going to be called Stagg. They've dropped the Junior. So I don't know if they're going to phase the George T Stagg BTAC out completely and just go with Stagg, or what they're going to do. But this bumps up from that Booker's a little bit. So this is 130.4. So what do you think about this one?
Well, it's pretty fiery right off the bat.
Yeah. 130.4. It's going to definitely be.
But on your second sip, it's much more pleasant. You got over that initial shock on your taste buds.
Yeah.
And then I get vanilla. And then there's a lot of cinnamon.
Yeah, there is, isn't there? Yeah.
And then I get a certain tartness in there. They're about midway.
Okay. Almost kind of a drying effect, almost, didn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Like a little tannic, like a drier wine or something.
And that could very well be from the barrel.
The barrel, yeah. And I'm not sure. I hate to say it. I don't remember what the age on the Stagg is, if it's the same, because this is the first bottle I've ever been able to track down. Because it's hard to find. These BTACs come out, and a good friend of mine up in Michigan actually texted me. I was doing some online tastings for her and her company, and she was at a store to pick up some stuff for the tasting, and she called me and she said, well, the guy up here says he's got some stuff that he'd be willing to sell me. He's got this one. It's called George Stagg. And I'm like, wait a second. Is it the big bottle wrapped up in paper? So she was kind enough to pick that up for me. So let's talk a little bit. We talked a little bit about the Sugarlands, and then the Master Distiller Show that you guys are doing.
Well, the Master Distiller Show probably is my favorite show.
Is it? Okay.
Number one, it's not as much work as dragging sugar and corn and steel parts out in the woods.
Right.
But we get to learn something occasionally.
Yeah.
And, even though it might be a novice, that's usually when somebody stumbles on the next big thing. They're a novice and they're experimenting.
Yeah.
So we learn a lot from these guys.
Yeah.
And I'm of the opinion you're the smartest you'll ever be the day you die if you do it right.
Right.
If you'll open your mind up, realize you're not that smart, you'll learn stuff.
Well, I think the one show that kind of amazed me was the one where they were making the, was it tequila? Maybe not tequila,
Machuga?
Yes, where they put a chicken in the pot. I'm like, what in the world? I've never heard of that before.
And I'd looked at that, and of course they talk about flavors, but these guys are, if you ever visit one of these places, one of the distilleries in Mexico, which a lot of them are illegal.
Yeah.
And Eric Rodriguez, who was the guest judge on that, he and I talked pretty extensively. And he said, part of my business is above board, part of it's not. And I hope this doesn't make it to the authorities in Mexico. But he said the reason for that is the government takes 60% of every dollar I make.
Oh, man.
Which is pretty. We thought we had it bad.
Yeah, that's hefty.
What is it? $21.50 a gallon right now on 100 proof liquor on proof gallons.
I think something like that. Yeah.
$21.50.
Yeah.
That's nowhere near 70, 60, 70%. So these guys have to go under the table to keep things going. Well, now that leading up to that, their stills are way more rudimentary than what we used even in the oldest of days.
Yeah.
Most of the time they're clay pots.
Really?
They're clay pots.
Okay.
And then they have a piece of bamboo or cottonwood coming out that brings the vapor off the cap. They're really ingenious in the way they work, but then again, you look at them and you say, damn, I don't know if I'd use that or not.
Yeah, right.
But I'm sure that it's the same way around here. People ran mash that was not finished yet.
Right.
And if it's not through fermenting, you've got a lot of starches left behind in there, which will boil over like a pot of potatoes.
Oh, okay.
And which will spoil your run. It'll puke over and cloud it up, and it's worthless at that point. So I think that the reason they put these in there was because of the fat content in the meat.
Okay.
And the lipids, then that's all foam reducer when you make beer or anything else,
right.
or you're distilling. The foam reducer, that's what it is. It's a cleaner lipid that they put on top of the mash, and it keeps the foam down. Allows the vapor to escape, but it does not foam up.
Gotcha.
So I think that's more the reason.
So it's not really necessary for trying to flavor the.
I could smell it when it was distilling off, but I couldn't taste it in the liquor. So
now is that show? Do they do that down at Sugarlands here, or is that
we've got another facility?
Okay,
we've leased because it takes so much of a footprint. Our show for Moonshiners, we've got 2 camera guys and then 2 support guys that hang around at the vehicles and watch them.
Gotcha.
On this set, we've got about 40 people.
Oh, really?
It's a whole lot bigger event.
Yeah, but you enjoy it more. I mean, just because.
Oh yeah, it's a whole lot more enlightening.
Yeah,
less tiring.
Yeah, very cool. So, what's the biggest thing on that show that is something that has surprised you the most? Is there anything that stands out?
There's what really surprises me, and some people that put all shame aside just for a few minutes on television. They have no idea what they're doing. They just saw a casting call advertised on social media and signed up.
Yeah.
And they've got their air still that they bought off Amazon where they can distill a few ounces of liquor out of a half-gallon content.
Yeah.
And they're a moonshiner, just like these people that go by NGS in the liquor store and put fruit punch with it, and they're
moonshiners.
It's like I tell people all the time, look, if you hadn't unloaded a transfer truckload of sugar in the course of a month, you're a hobby distillist at best. I'm sorry, it might hurt your feelings, but unless you've unloaded at least a pallet of sugar in the course of a day, you're not a moonshiner.
Yeah. Well, but I love the show. We love watching it. And I can see where, it's not as much work, but it is a neat view into how different people make different liquors. Oh, yeah. It's a really cool concept. I like that. So now we talked a little bit about Sugarlands. Has there ever been a point where you've thought, well, maybe this is something that I would like to do? Now, because we had Tim on the show a couple of months ago, Tim Smith, and obviously talked to him about the transition where he, had gone in and started Tim Smith Spirits and doing his stuff. So has there been a point with you and Mark where you think, well, maybe we could look at doing that?
No.
Okay.
I'm perfectly content where I'm at.
Okay.
The recipes we wanted Sugarlands to have, they have. And that may be one of these days we might, or I might just pass them on to my kids, and it'll be up to them to do something.
What they do. Yeah.
We were talking about Tim Jones there earlier. Hello, Tim, if you're out there. And, we were asked to do a certain type of run for Master Distiller, which Mark and I did, and Tim refused because he didn't know anything about it. And I said, well, hell, I don't either, but I'm not scared.
Yeah.
So we made what they asked us to, and he continued on what he was going to do. And it was really, really unique. It was made from extract, grain extract.
Oh, okay.
The beer brewers call it LME, liquid malt extract.
Okay.
And we used rye.
Yeah.
And which it needed distilling twice. But it really had a really powerful caramel candy flavor.
Did it? Okay.
Which would have cleared up more and probably opened up to more on a second or third distillation.
Yeah.
And I was really fascinated about it. I hadn't pursued it anymore, and that was Tim. He asked me, he said, would this be something you'd let go of? And I said, maybe not. We'll talk.
It depends on if the price is, as Bob Barker would say, if the price is right.
I don't know. I tell people all the time, I might not sell you something, but I'll damn sure lease it to you.
There you go. That's right. That's a good point. So, in speaking of which, I was going to ask you with your hazelnut with the Sugarlands. Uh-huh. So, is this a licensing deal with them for your name and likeness, or is it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. But now, was this a recipe as well that you guys actually came up with, the hazelnut rum? It was one that had been around for a long time. Oh, that's right. You got on the show. You guys had you had the party, kind of a big party at the end. That was several seasons ago, wasn't it? So,
it was.
Yeah.
And it goes way beyond that. This goes back to the late 70s, early 80s.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And this particular liquor, there was I call it the original moonshine bar. It was called Fort Marks.
Okay.
And there's a lot of articles on travel blogs that have come back up online here of late. But Fred Marks and his wife had a little old bar. And he made wine and beer, but he didn't know how to make liquor.
Yeah.
So he was curious, and we started delving into little things together. And this was one of the byproducts of it, and which it was one of the biggest sellers at his place, even through their successors, being Arthur and Jeanette Teague that took it over after the fact. They still bought a lot of it. And it sold like mad. It was the biggest seller in the place.
Wow.
And they've since closed down. Arthur and Jeanette have both died, God rest them. But we got to talking about this. I said, well, let's put the rye apple out there first, and then we'll throw this one out there second.
Yeah.
We really didn't know them.
Right.
We didn't know about doing business with them. We were really ignorant as to the business world of this on
Right.
the legal scale.
Right.
So once we saw that Ned Vickers was an upright individual and would do what he said, then we threw the big baby out. And
Nice.
it passed up everything in the distillery.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Well, I'm definitely going to have to take a little snort on that one, just to try it out. So I'll definitely do that. I still got a little bit of George Stagg in the glass. Going back to the taste, I know you talked a little bit about this on the taste. For me, we've tasted this several different times. I like it, but I'll be honest. I think I like the Booker's better than the Stagg. And it's just there's something about that Booker's that comes across with that cherry, that brown sugar, caramel type of flavor. This Stagg is good, but
this has got a little really dry mid finish.
Yeah,
to me, and I'm not a fan of that.
I'm not either. That's something that I know some people really like that tannic kind of flavor. I'm actually picking up almost a little bit of leather too, which is fine. I don't mind leather.
Just not that prominent.
But that prominent with that tannic effect as well. Which is kind of funny because we reviewed this on an episode about a month or so ago with the guys, and we all were just like, I don't want to say underwhelmed, but
I'm not impressed. I won't say I'm underwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm not impressed.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing. So maybe that's why they decided, hey, maybe it's time to retire the George T. Stagg and
save that up for somebody. Maybe it gets better.
I don't know. I was going to say I've had it for 4 or 5 months, and it's one of those bottles where like I said, it's the first bottle of Stagg I've been able to put my hands on. So it's something that's always fun to share because it's something a lot of people aren't going to get the opportunity to buy. And if you go out to a bar and get it, they're going to charge you $50 a pour or $75, whatever crazy
that's
prices.
A little sad. That's why you do your homework before you buy you a high dollar drink in a bar.
Yep. I definitely agree with that. So let's talk about the future. Let's talk about what it looks like for you personally, for what you're doing. The show, everything, still planning to do?
Well, we'll do the show as long as we have to. We don't have a lot left on our contract. And to be honest, Mark and I are ready to rest.
All right, okay.
Now, will we? You ask about a distillery, and I put a little thought into it.
Yeah.
I thought, well, maybe I'll just set up a little old 1-barrel still.
Yeah.
And run it, make 100 gallon a month, and when it's gone, it's gone. And if nobody buys it, I'll barrel it back.
Right.
And just let it sit.
Right.
But not a big fan of paperwork.
I was going to say that's a big jump right there. I guess that's the big headache.
I'd just soon do it the easy way.
I get it. Yeah, and when you're dealing with those attorneys,
we plan on doing a lot more with Sugarlands. They're good people. They're a family. When we say family, we mean it. We know the folks that work up there.
Okay,
we're emotionally invested in them, and they are with us.
Good.
And we'd like to be at that distillery more often, but time just doesn't permit it now. So maybe if we get this behind us, we can continue to entertain folks up there.
Yeah, and I know they put out that rye each year, the Roaming Man rye, which I bought a bottle of at Grains and Grits yesterday.
Yeah,
and they seem to be having quite a bit of success with that.
It sells really well.
Yeah, and it's a 375, so it's a half bottle, which is,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I was like, oh, I want a bottle of that. And they're like, well, here you go. I'm like, oh, wait a second.
That's a baby bottle.
That's a baby bottle. I need 2 of those. But yeah, so I mean, I think that was batch number 12, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
so
I think so.
Seemed like they're doing a pretty good job getting it up.
I'll be completely honest about it. I'm not particularly fond of it.
Yeah.
I think that the grain bill could be a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't know do you know what the mash bill is on that? I mean, it's a rye whiskey, but I don't know what
it needs
content.
a little bit of barley in there.
I got you.
And maybe a little wheat to mellow that out a little bit.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I haven't cracked it open. I took a sample last night. Of course, there were quite a few samples last night at Grains and Grits.
Yeah, there's plenty of them.
So you just, I got to that point, maybe I was like, yeah, it tastes good, but I'm not really sure I'm tasting this. But I bought a bottle anyway.
I'm tasting it, but I don't know if I'll remember it.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully continue with the show. As a fan of the show, like I said before, you and Mark definitely make the show fun to watch.
Yeah. Now, if the main show goes away, I'm good with that. That's a lot of less work on us. But
Sure.
I'd love to see Master Distiller go on and on and on. Now, that and the reason for that, we see people on the legal end as well as the illegal end that come in there to hawk their wares. And you see that there's a lot of people that are in the legal end that didn't do their homework as well.
Yeah.
And of course we've got them a hard learning curve when they come in there. A propane fired 20-gallon pot.
Yeah.
I don't even like to run little pots like that, so I can imagine how they are.
Well, it's funny because my wife and I joke about it, but it's like probably 75 to 80% of the people that are in there, by the end of the show, they are drenched in sweat.
Yeah.
I mean, they are just like,
well, it's either hot or cold when you're in there. There's no air conditioning. It's just a warehouse.
It's a warehouse. Yeah, it's funny because I'm like, man, those guys are working it and they're nervous. You can tell, and they're sweating it. So, but it is a great show. So, well, that's about all the questions I had for you. Is there anything you want to add before we close it out, wrap it up here?
I think we're good. Get you some Sugarlands shine and tune into Moonshiners is all I can tell you.
Yeah, so they could find Moonshiners, of course, the TV shows on Discovery Channel. I know
if you don't find what me and Mark are doing entertaining, there's something wrong with you.
Well, like I said, my wife and I are fans. We enjoy watching the show, definitely do, and appreciate you taking the time on a Sunday afternoon to sit down and invite us down.
Glad
here
to do it.
Newport.
Come on back anytime. Maybe we'll catch Mark when he's in a working mood.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. Well, I tell you what, with that, I'm going to thank our sponsors. We appreciate Bespoken Spirits, our presenting sponsor, and all the other sponsors that we work with. We really appreciate all their support. Digger, appreciate you being with us today. Really, really appreciate that.
Glad you'd have me.
Yeah. Well, we thank all of our listeners as well. Appreciate all your support. You guys can check us out, obviously, on all the podcasting platforms, Instagram, pretty much on Facebook, anywhere on social media. You can find us out there, and we just appreciate all of your support. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.
Whether it's rye, sour mash Tennessee whiskey, or bourbon, Davidson Reserve has something delicious to offer any whiskey lover's palate. Pick up a bottle of one of our award-winning Davidson Reserve whiskeys from your local retailer today. Visit www.davidsonreserve.com for more information. And cheers to drinking local.